It'd be pretty funny.
Well, yeah, John got called in. It is what it is.
Joe?
She's from Florida.
Oh, Joe.
Not take your call?
No, I said if he did. I haven't.
Joe's in Florida, and here we are. Does not surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, Washington thermometer keep going down.
Oh.
All day long.
All day long. Is it supposed to start going up tomorrow?
I think so.
Tomorrow.
Up till Sunday, it's supposed to be relatively nice.
Another blast. Another blast. Here he comes. Okay. It is 6 o'clock. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Welcome on this very frigid evening. We will have roll call.
Fish.
Here.
Hausman. Jones. McInerney. Wells. Mayor Measley.
Here. All right. Item 3 is the agenda, and I believe it's Council VP, not Council President. So I would make that change.
Put that change out.
I have a motion from Jones, second by McInerney, to approve the amended agenda. Questions or discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. On item number 4, it is the approval of the minutes, the December 28th briefing meeting and the January 2nd regular council meeting.
I'll go second.
All right, I have a motion from Jones, second from Fish to approve the minutes of those two meetings. Questions or discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving on to item 5, we have the claims for January 15th, 2018. I have a motion from Wells, second by McInerney, to approve the claims. Questions or discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. On item 6 is our consent calendar. It is a plat of Lot 1A, Pearson's subdivision. I will entertain a motion in a second.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I have motion Jones, second by Fish for the approval of the consent calendar. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This brings us to our visitors and timed items. I have nothing on my agenda, but that does not mean you can't come up, address the council. You have 5 minutes. All I ask is you state your name and your address.
Spencer Shank. I live at 110 West River Oak Street here in Brandon. I just want to make a comment tonight. I know you guys will be voting on who's going to fill Mr. Brooks' seat. I would ask that you consider Tim Wakefield. I think he'd be a good advocate for the city of Brandon for the water and any other items that come up. I think he would be very diligent in researching any concern and come up with a resolution to whatever problem may arise. Again, I just want to give my support to Tim.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Push the purple button, sir. Thank you very much.
Dan Guimo, 2413 East Lopez Lane. Mr. Mayor, Council, I've been up here before, been absent for a little bit, had some health issues. But I also am in support of Tim Wakefield. Want to give a little rundown. I know some of you guys we've met personally, so you kind of have my background, but I still consider myself a little new to Brandon. We've been here a couple of years, but we love this town. I just unbelievably surprised with how great this community has been to me and my family. We researched a lot of areas, chose Brandon as our home. The school districts are awesome here. Our kids couldn't be happier. We found Brandon is not substandard in any way, shape, or form. Our athletics are outstanding. We are not a Sioux Falls suburb. We find pride in Brandon. We learn from our neighbors and friends here that Brandon is Brandon, and we do things right. The only thing I have been disappointed with since we moved here is the water quality. You guys have heard me up here before. We don't have a solution. I've heard ongoing problems from you guys. I've researched that a little bit. It sounds like it's been going on for a long, long time. And I don't think anyone blames anyone sitting at this table. I certainly don't. But we do hold the people sitting at this table responsible to come up with solutions. Change is a hard thing. We're resistant to it. I know Tim Wakefield has brought different solutions, different ideas to the table here, and he's met with some resistance. That's normal. What I'm really asking you guys is to listen to those ideas. As the person before me spoke said, he digs into things. I've spent more time on water than I ever thought I would in a lifetime, researching it, talking to people who know things. Tim's helped me with a few things. I have personal friends that are professionals in this. That's what they do for a living. I like what he's got to say. Mr. Wells, I think you were probably one of the advocates, or not an advocate of Tim's, but once you listen to some things that he's got to say, it makes some sense. And to me, that's where we need to go with this, and we need to look at other solutions. Again, Mr. Wells, there's public opinion out there. You've been one of the only who have got out on social media and asked, what do the residents want? I think I've heard every one of you guys say, we want what the people want. We want what is best for them. I've seen two polls, the one that you did. Do we want an RFQ? Do we want a second look at the solution we're looking at? Do we want hookup to rural water? What were those? 99% of our community said, yes, that's what we want. Listen to them. Second poll I saw, the Journal did. The residents, 75% of the people want Tim Wakefield sitting in that chair. I don't know how you look away from that. That tells me what the people want here. Last thing I have to say on this, I know, John, you and I talked about it a little bit. A solution might not be cost effective. I have a hard time grasping that. There is not any amount of money that I wouldn't spend to put clean drinking water in my kids' tap, period. And I don't think there's a resident that would say differently. So if the solution that you guys find isn't the cheap one, I think the residents are okay with that. We need to sustain our water supply or this town dries. So I think Tim Wakefield's the guy. I'm behind him 100%. I hope you guys can see it that way too. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we have started where we've answered questions, and I think, oh, excuse me. Push the purple button, sir. Name and address for me, please.
Stan Tyree, and I live at 209 West Hackberry Street. I do fully support Tim, but I would like to tell you that I was born with a heart defect. I go to the doctor every 6 months. And the last few years, I've been anemic. Just so happens the doctors can't figure out what's going on. But guess what? One of the causes of anemia is radium-226 and 228. I believe it's real, and I think Tim should be on the board.
Thank you. All right. again,
Angie Nimmers, 1028 Heatherwood Drive, here in Brandon. Mayor and council, I came to the briefing meeting the other night because I did not know who Mr. Starzl or Mr. Parsons were. And I've been educating myself along the way with the water committee and whatnot. And I do believe that Mr. Starzl and Mr. Parsons could bring a fresh perspective. However, I throw my support to Tim as well. He's passionate about our water quality here in Brandon. The thing that, for me, I've never been really involved in city council. I always figured it was someone else's problem. And seeing Tim's passion about doing the right thing and standing up and professionally and saying what he wants to say, he has my support, so I urge you to put him in Mr. Brooks's chair as well. Thanks.
thank you. Others? All right. John, you want to take, or do you want comment or anything?
You had a comment? Yeah, go ahead.
Not about this, go ahead.
Oh. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in before we get to it on the agenda. I know my approach is probably different, not only in this, but in many ways. I feel like I provide somewhat of a different perspective at times. As far as the appointment to the council seat, I'm quite sure that any one of those three gentlemen could do a good job. And I am not voting against the two individuals because, I'm confident they could do just fine up here. But I've always said, and I think tonight proves it, I want to be a voice of the community. I want to be up here acting on what the community wants. And it's clear to me that they want Tim in this position. Through a couple resources. Number one, the poll in the paper, and I understand that a very few percent, a small percentage of the community responded to that poll, but the people that did, it was overwhelmingly 75%. So I understand that. Being in charge of the water committee, I get approached on this all the time. I think everybody knows my point, my stance on the water. I think we need more water and better water. And I'm willing to, as one of the individuals said, I'm willing to pay a little more to do that. As one of a neighbor of mine said, he put it in good terms. He said, I'm willing to spend the money to make our water worth my kids sticking around and raising their family here. And that's the way I feel too. So let's talk about the three individuals. Again, nothing against Chuck or Jim. I do not know them. In fact, I've never spoken to them. Tim, on the other hand, I have. Through the water committee meetings, he's got a lot of energy. Tim and I did not get along at first. I'll be the first to say. The reason for that is because we were being told that some of the things we were doing were wrong. And it's inherent to human nature. When you're told you're doing something wrong, you put your hands up in defense and say, back off. I know what I'm doing. And that's not the right approach. When you're being told you're doing something wrong, you need to dive into the situation and really take a good, honest look at yourself and the processes that you're involved in. And that's what I did. And I agree that there are some things that we need to improve upon as far as how we handle things. And Tim was the first person to say that. After I blew up at Tim at one of our meetings back 4 or 5 months ago, I called him the day before Thanksgiving. I said, Tim, we got to meet. Let's meet at the coffee shop in 10 minutes. He showed up. And that's when our relationship developed from there. Tim's got a lot of energy. He's got a lot of passion for this. I understand that what he says sometimes offends people up here, and I get that. but sometimes what he says is correct. And the hardest thing to do is to listen to someone tell you that you're doing something wrong. It's the hardest thing to respond to, but sometimes it's needed. So, trust me when I say Tim has a lot of passion. I get texts at 11:30 at night sometimes from the guy. I mean, I appreciate that. I really do. I appreciate that kind of energy that goes into this. Not that you need to do that, you know, but it's appreciated. I appreciate that passion. He's on the water committee meeting, or he's on the water committee, and through that, Tim and I, aside from, you know, the phone, we've had a few phone calls, mainly texts. Aside from that, we've spent a lot of time discussing issues in the water committee meetings and afterwards. I think that his approach sometimes, again, sets us back on our heels. I'm not afraid to invite that into my house, because if I am truly doing something wrong, then I want to know about it and I want to change it. I know this is not the most popular approach to this, but that's how I feel. And again, I want to be the voice of the community, and I think a lot of the community feels that way. So I'll hush now. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
So, Mayor, just a point of clarification. So this is for a 3-month term?
Yes.
And then whoever is interested in this seat may pursue a campaign and
Yes.
run for election?
In
Is that correct?
February, you can pull a petition. It has to be in by the last Friday in May, or in March.
No, February.
The last February, 5 o'clock in the last last day of February.
So the 28th.
Yep, first day to pull petitions is the 20th.
January 26th is the first day to poll petitions. The last Friday in February, which is
The last Friday is the 23rd.
23rd at 5 p.m. would be the last day to turn them in.
And the election is the second Tuesday
In April.
Again, just to clarify, this is a seat for 3 months,
3 months.
and then if we have many people interested in it, they can run for that slot, correct?
Correct.
And is that a 4-year term then?
No, they would finish a 2-year term.
A 2-year term, okay.
The remainder of former Councilman Brooks' term.
Well, there'll be 3 openings in Ward 3, or 2 openings in Ward 3. One will be a 4-year term, and then one will be the 2-year balance of Roger's term.
Yep.
And they'll have to file for one or the other, not
Yep.
both.
So we are not making a commitment for a 4-year term at this point in time. We're talking 3 months.
Yep. Okay.
Can I ask this? There was quite a few people show up tonight. If you're here because you want Tim voted in, raise your hand. Okay.
John, you want to go with your questions?
Not really questions.
Yeah.
In the past, a few meetings back, we had talked about, you know, what does the city do about addressing some of the questions out there, some of the questions that I get by email or phone calls or texts, or they're more commonly obviously posted online, and some of the hot topics out there. How do we bring the city's viewpoint forward? How do we respond to these? What's the best manner? One of the ideas and thoughts we had was, you know, during the visitors' timed items, at least address some of the common ones that are out there. So those that know me know I'm not on Facebook, never have been. I did actually have the day off of work today due to Martin Luther King Day, and I took advantage of that by spending time with my daughter, bring my boys to school. But the other thing I did is I actually got on Facebook today. And sorry, I don't speak very well when I'm emotional about a subject. I'll just throw that out there right now. So this probably won't go very clearly or very eloquently, but some of the common themes I saw, I do want to address. The first one I've written down is that, not a big deal, but I see that some folks are out there posting signs. And the sign says, "Water for people, not for profits." This is a huge head scratcher to me. I don't know what it means. I know what water for people means. I do not know what water not for profits means. If anybody in the audience has thoughts,
their opinions, I'd be more than open to hear them, because what I do have is information that is actually factual. Brandon's water rates compared to the surrounding community are some of the lowest in the region. Our water rates are 13 out of 15 surrounding communities. So our rates are low. The other, our water fund balance, the amount of money we have in the bank to support future projects, is extremely strong. It is extremely strong because we have planned ahead. We have planned for funding some of the projects that we had in place, whether it be the water towers, whether it be the looping, whether it be looking for new sources. Those things were all built into the rates to plan ahead, to build a fund balance so that we actually have that money there to do those things without actually raising rates. This is prudent financial management. So when I see signs, when I see people out there campaigning and saying, water for people, not for profits, I truly don't know what it means. Everything I've seen thus far points that we've been doing in a very, very fiscally responsible manner. So if folks have thoughts, I'm more than open to hear them. We're more than open to provide that information to you so that you have the complete information. So that was one thing. And I don't know if anybody in the council has any thoughts. Don, you're certainly closer to water than everybody, but those are the two main points I'd just like to point out. A, our low rates, our fund balance. You know, from a purely financial perspective, we're in a very good position. Everybody in the council understands we need to make improvements on quantity and quality. Those things are that we're actively addressing. We've enacted the water committee. We've taken recommendations. We're looking at the RFP process. So all this feedback from the community that we've received are things that we've actually taken action on and are working towards implementing. So again, I don't understand a lot of that criticism out there. The other one that I'd just like to address is, you know, I saw a couple statements that, you know, the council members should be on Facebook. They should be on Facebook actively responding to all these questions, to all these concerns. We've had that discussion numerous times. Is that the right thing to do? At the same time, when I was on there, what I observed is that when somebody posted a comment that ever so questioned the original poster or the theme and the topic, that had a slightly different viewpoint, you know, they were chastised. They were ganged up on. Again, these things get me emotional. I saw folks call us cowards because we're not on their posting. The same individuals that are sitting at home behind a keyboard, bullying people, pointing fingers, calling names. To me, that's quite cowardly. The people I've talked to, face to face, individually, they don't agree with most of what's said on there. They don't agree with the tone of the message board. But they don't post in fear of this backlash. So do I view this message board as an actual sounding board for the community? Do I view it as representative of the feelings of the community? I do not. The people that have differing opinions are scared. They're scared to post. They're scared to get that backlash. So we can all talk about what's going on there, and that's the will of the community. I don't view that's the case. Those are the things I'd like to address today.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I may.
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to look at certain individuals in this audience, and you know who you are. I'm going to fall back on John's comments about the posts online. The personal attacks that have been pointed towards this council are so unnecessary. And you have no idea the ripple effect that has in our community when we post things like that, and residents within our community, business owners within our community, people outside our community wanting to move into our community, see the type of negative tone that has been portrayed out there. And I agree with John. I could give you a legal page of people that would like to reply, but they're afraid to, because they're afraid to be put in the crosshairs of these individuals because they're ruthless. This community is better than that. I spent 54 years in this community. the better part of my adult life, I have been in the public eye and worked to better our community in one form or another. Just to be thrown under the bus, ridiculed, criticized, my integrity brought into question, outright lies posted online. It's unfortunate. And I would hope that those people that are here tonight, and I applaud you for coming to support Tim, I hope that you would look within yourselves and understand that it needs to stop. It needs to stop. I've raised 4 children in this community. I've remarried, and I'm raising another group of children in this community. I'm extremely proud of what we are and what we've become. I'm extremely proud of how progressive we are, and we're better than this. And to call us corrupt is uncalled for and unfounded.
I guess I became involved with the council because I was asked to run after I've been president of the Chamber of Commerce. And I've always felt that it's really important to do public service and show my kids that you need to be a good volunteer. But as the other members have stated, it's really distressing when you are attacked for just trying to do a good job. I'm just up here trying to do the best I can. I got no vested interest in any of this. You know, we make $5,000 a year, which is great, but you know, that's not going to feed my family. So I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it for public service. I think I have a good mind. I have a good business mind, and I try to be fair. And to say that we are, you know, somebody's greasing my palm, I'd sure like to hell see that. You know, I'd like to see some money pass my hand, because that is not the case. So please stop the bullying. I mean, I can understand what it feels like to be a kid in high school, because that's the way I feel. I'm up for re-election, and I was all set to run because there's some things I want to get done on the park board yet. I'd like to have one more term and then hand it off. But quite honestly, you know, is it worth the abuse? I don't know. I'm not a quitter, and so we'll just see. But it's been unfortunate that it's gone this far. It could have gone a lot different way and been a lot more positive. So I'm going to vote how I feel. The citizens asked me to do the best job I can, and that's how I'm going to vote. And you know, if that isn't what folks like, that's their opportunity. Thank you.
To respond to that, I think that's important. It's tough to be up here because there's a lot of different viewpoints, and you will never be right in this community 100%. You're always going to have people against you in the decisions that you make. No matter who gets on the council now or in the future, I think it's extremely important. We got to move forward as a team. We got to respect each other, respect the town as a whole, and move together, move forward as a team. I think I agree. It's very important to gain some of that respect back. And you know, I think a lot of this has come forward because of the water problem. I think that's what has created most of our problems. We're working on that. That's you know, 40 years of history we can't change in 2 weeks, but I think we've made some good progress, and we've got some good things coming in the near future. So yeah, my biggest thing is I will speak as a council member. One of the hardest things to do is to stand up here and fight your fight, and the amount of time that I put into this, it's sometimes between this and the committee, it's quite unbelievable. And to put that time and effort into that, and then turn around and someone tell you that you're wrong, it's tough. You know, I think it's important that we move forward rather than backwards in negativity, no matter what happens. I mean, I've kind of spoke my piece on what I think, but no matter what happens, I think it is important to move together as a team, get back to how we were, I guess.
And I don't think anybody's sitting up here saying we have all the answers. I have never seen us not being willing to take input and try to deal with it. We don't have all the answers, but please remember, hindsight is 20/20, and so it's real easy to come in and say, well, you should have done this. Why didn't you think about this? We honestly are really trying to do the best we can. So if you give us a little grace on that, that would be really appreciated.
I agree with everything that has been said. Anything else, visitors' timed items, please? All right, moving on. Item number 8, we have alderman appointment for Ward 3, and then I have the oath of office here. As I explained on Thursday, and I've explained multiple times, the council will help me decide. It's not my appointment, even though I have the power to make that appointment. I did it when Mr. McInerney filled in this term. I have done it for 4 or 5 others. I did it with the city administrator. I did it with the police chief. I did it with the public works guy, because ultimately they vote on it. So I respect their opinions. With that being said, I will open it up.
Don, kind of, you went through and gave a great summary too. A little bit of what I'd like to talk about is just, kind of what information, at least me personally, I use to make a decision. So I do this every day at work, and this is a different thing. I interview people and hire people, but this is a little bit different position. But at the end of the day, how you make a decision, whether it's a good or bad decision, kind of depends on, it's kind of a common theme, right? So for this decision, for me personally, this is how I kind of went about it. To me, there's 2 big things that you can take into account. One is, the interviewing with the applicants themselves. The other is the public input, which is so valuable. And just to speak a little bit about the interviews, obviously Thursday night, we got to hear from all 3 of the applicants. I'm very impressed by all 3. I will say that till I can't speak no more. I'm happy with the applicants we got. I think they're all very impressive. I think all 3 would do a very good job. The unfortunate part with that type of interview is you get very limited time with somebody. You get a couple minutes, you get to hear them give their speech, you might ask them a question or 2. That's not a lot of time to learn about somebody, not to learn what they believe and not to learn about who they are as a person, what kind of council member they would make. The other part of interviews to me is more philosophical and just how I live my life. To me, you are interviewing every single day. You are interviewing not necessarily for a job, but how you act in public, how you act in public meetings, how you act on social media, how I act with my kids' teachers, how I act at work with my bosses, my coworkers, all these things. I'm interviewing for maybe not a position that day, maybe not a position that week, but at the end of the day, I'm always interviewing. That's how I kind of operate my life. I always want to be viewed professionally. I always want to treat people courteously. We have some history with some of these applicants. Chuck Parsons. Chuck, we've known for quite some time. He's very familiar to the Brandon residents. He's involved in the P&Z. He's involved in the chamber. He's involved in Development Foundation. He's involved in Lions Club. He's involved in the revolving loan fund. So we've got a lot of background on Chuck. Tim, we're just starting to get to know over the last 6 to 9 months. Don summarized it very well, I thought. Tim has a lot of great qualities. He is very diligent. He is willing to dig into things. So there's tons of great things about Tim as well. Jim, we're just getting to know him too. This was probably our first foray into meeting you, so we got less to go off of. That doesn't mean that you're behind the 8 ball. I thought you did an excellent job. I'd be more than happy to have you sit up here.
Very much so.
The other one I kind of mentioned was public input. Don and some of the others mentioned the online poll. That is certainly a valuable piece of information. I'm not going to say that is not something that we shouldn't take into account. We could argue all day about whether online polls are valid, whether they can be manipulated. I'm not going to go there. It is a piece of information that should be used in the decision, and it certainly is in mine. The other is, from public input, it's not just an online poll, but, there is person-to-person feedback. I've received calls, I've received texts, I've received emails, and more importantly, I've received face-to-face contact with a lot of the individuals out there giving me advice, giving me their thoughts on each one of the candidates. It's whether I run into somebody at Jubilee or 212 or anywhere. You know, they are giving me their thoughts in that manner. So that is public input as well. That public input differed, you know, in terms of who the favorite applicant should be. And to be honest, the most common theme, the most common feedback I got was that, John, you should just put in the person that's going to cause you the least grief. And I don't mean grief from that individual. I probably misspoke there. I mean having to deal with the public backlash. I mean dealing with the online media. Your life would be 10 times easier if you chose one candidate over another. I said, I absolutely agree. That is 100% true. But is it the right thing to do? Is that fair to all the applicants? Is that what we are in this position to do, is to make the easy decision? I don't believe that. As such, I will nominate or make a motion to approve Chuck Parsons for the position.
And just, I also want to say, since the letters of interest were received by the city, I've taken a large amount of time. I took the entire day today, going out and meeting with individuals, meeting with leaders within the community, meeting with business owners, meeting with residents, to try to get the voice that's not being heard, just to get a pulse of the community. Because there's a large contingent of people out there right now that are just not really willing to open their mouth because of the direction that this has gone. And I overwhelmingly got the same feedback. And with what you said, I will second that for Chuck Parsons.
I have a motion from McInerney, second by Jones, to appoint Mr. Chuck Parsons for the Ward 3 for February, March, April. 3 months. Discussion. If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Parsons, I assume you are here. You need to come take an oath of office, sir.
I, Chuck Parsons, having been appointed to the office of Alderman Ward 3 within said city of Brandon, South Dakota, do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of South Dakota, and all local ordinances of said city of Brandon, and that I will faithfully and impartially, due to the best of my ability, perform all duties of said office of Alderman according to the law.
All right, and then this is yours. Your chair is right there, sir. Congratulations.
Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you.
Before we move on to electing a VP, I would also like to say that the 3 candidates we had were very, very qualified. Again, yes, take out a petition. Take out a petition. There are spots open. Take out a petition. I did that 15 years ago. Not sure why, but I did.
That now.
My political science professor was happy. But yes, get involved in city government. And again, James, you were a top candidate. Tim, you're a top candidate. Any one of you would have been excellent up here. I truly believe that. Thank you. Yes.
Mayor, I want to second that. Again, Chuck and Jim, I am not voting against you. I think both of you are very highly qualified. probably more so than myself. So I welcome you. I encourage the others to run here in the next 3 months, and that's all.
Okay. We do have a vacancy for the council vice president, and in years past, I have accepted nominations from the council.
I will nominate John McInerney.
I am going to nominate Barb Fish. No.
Hey, I'll nominate Joe Hausman.
Well, I've got 3 nominees, but no second on any. I got.
I'll say I think
Fish.
Barb would make an excellent candidate. I think that her experience on the council. I think a little bit of diversity in the ranks would be well received as well. I think she'd be perfect for the position. So.
As long as Barb will have it, I'll second that.
So, anybody want to close nominations?
I will close nominations.
I have a motion to close nominations. I have a second from Wells. My nomination is Barb Fish for vice president. Vice president. Yes. So I have a motion from McInerney, second from Wells to appoint Barb Fish as council VP. Questions or discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on. We have quite a few people from the golf course here tonight.
All right, here we go. All right, just wanted to review this past 2017 golf season. I guess I start out with highlight of hosting the SDGA State Amateur Tournament for the first time in our history this year. Everything went very well. Kelly had the course in fantastic shape. Through having this tournament, the SCGA would like us to host the state match play in 2019. So we're excited about that. Within a 3-year span, we're going to host 2 of the biggest tournaments that the SDGA has. So I think that's going to be good for the course and also good for the community. So we're excited about that. Regarding our cart paths, we completed 4 more holes this year. Holes 6 through 9. Kelly and I have been working on this for the last 3 years. So far, we've completed 12 holes. I guess if you want to look at it from the standpoint of, if we have a cement contractor come in here and have them do it for us, it basically costs us about $175,000. So, we've did this on our own basically with minimal costs through the efforts of the golf committee, fundraising through the golf committee with our brick and rock sales. And then also doing the work ourselves, so we're kind of proud of that.
A lot of volunteer work.
So we got about a hole and a half left, and I think we got, I don't know, Christina probably knows, we have $1,200 left in our account. So our goal is to complete this on raised funds. We still have a fundraiser golf tournament in April, so we think we can get this done. So again, we have a hole and a half left, and our master plan will be finished. We think we'll get it done by, spring or first part of summer. I would say that we've seen a transformation of the golf course since doing these cart paths. Before the cart paths, you'd see a lot of worn out areas, where there'd be cart traffic, bare dirt, and then if it rained, you'd have mud, and then you have muddy carts. So this has basically all been cleaned up. Kelly put a lot of work into it as well, and so it's really done a lot to enhance the aesthetics of the golf course. So, in terms of the conditions this year, I guess it's probably, I've been here 21 years, probably the best conditions the course has ever been in, and that's a credit to Kelly. Kelly he wanted to have it in tip-top shape for the state tournament. He always says, we got company coming. We want to clean it up and make it look nice. So, and it's basically the same with all our golf outings too. So, kudos to Kelly. Just to break down on the revenue or on some of the numbers, looking on the revenue side of things, instead of comparing our numbers this year to last year, what I wanted to do was compare our revenue numbers from this year to our last 5-year average. The reason why I wanted to do that is because, as you all know, Great Life is coming to the arena, and they have changed the landscape of the golf business. So, we got to realize that. So I wanted to see what kind of effect it's had on, on our business. So first, looking at the pro shop side of things, basically all the golf revenue, we're down slightly, about 3% compared to our 5-year average. But that's mainly due to we had the worst spring weather on record this year in March and April, and it even stretched into May. So if we would have had just an average spring, we would have generated an additional probably $30,000 to $40,000 in revenue. So that's just the way it is. Them are uncontrollable factors in terms of weather. So, and like I said, it even stretched into May because our first golf outing of the year was Bethany, and we had to cancel it because there was rain and sleet. What was it? May 19th, I think, May 15th. So, the other thing I'd like to point out, so basically, if we would have had a normal spring, our revenue would have been about average the last 5 years. So, the other thing I'd like to point out in terms of, our golf revenue in the last 4 years, we really haven't raised any fees. And the reason why we wanted to do that is to stay competitive with, with the other courses, and also Great Life, who has kind of changed the landscape of the golf business in our area. So, really, when I look at it, we really haven't seen any negative impact. We haven't taken a big hit in our golf revenue, so I guess you can look at that as a positive. Looking at the lounge, our lounge is actually up 10% compared to our 5-year average. And I don't know, we're having more and more golf outings every year. I think we've taken maybe some from Great Life a little bit because they need more players for, you can't tie up the course because they got so many members. So we're seeing an increase in golf outings. I think we have 52 this year. So, and I guess the more outings you have, the more beverages you sell in the lounge. So I guess that might correlate if you wanted to look for a correlation. The community room, here's where we see a little bit of a negative impact. The last, on that 5-year average, our this year compared to the 5-year average is down about 10%. And I think the reason that is there's more venues than there ever used to be. One of the popular thing now, Carrie will attest to it, is I guess barn weddings are popular.
Yes.
So
yes, barn
so
weddings
we're competing with that. So we're seeing about a 10% decrease this year compared to our 5-year average. So, and I know we talked to the Holiday Inn Express and and some other venues, and they're noticing the decline as well. So it's just the increased competition. So that's basically the revenue side of things. Nothing really, huge in terms of the impact to the golf course. Now the expense side. The expense side here is where we see more of an impact. Basically, the costs of running the golf course keep going up every year. And then this trend is going to probably continue until we have a big weight taken off us in 4 years when we pay off our loan, which is $140,000. That's going to help things a lot. Right now, it's going to be a struggle. Just a few things to point out that I'm noticing on the expense side. The clubhouse is entering its 16th year. Just to give you a few things, we're seeing a lot of repairs, maintenance. We had our heating and air conditioning unit break down this year for the whole clubhouse. In the lounge, our ventilation hood system broke down in the kitchen. We've had numerous equipment breakdown, a big refrigeration unit. So we're seeing some increase in costs, and that's just from wear and tear on some of the equipment. So, you know, and there's things that we really need to do to the clubhouse as well. We're looking at more maintenance things there as well, upkeep. Golf carts. We're having a lot of broken down golf carts. You know, we're going, I'm not sure, Brian, is it 7 or 8 years on our carts, I think? I think we're going on either 7 or 8 years on these golf carts, so we're seeing more repairs on those. Now, Mike, I think we're seeing about 15,000 in repairs a year. My goal would be to try to stretch these carts out as far as we can. But if we're looking at a new fleet of golf carts, you're looking at $250,000, and we're looking at about a $45,000 payment. You know, do we really want that burden right now? I guess the way I look at it is, let's just keep fixing them. You know, there's a point to where I guess it's going to affect our customer service at some point, because you got to go out there and get a dead cart, and we've been doing that a lot lately. So, I mean, that's just something that we're struggling with. And then the other thing, you know, we are doing a lot more golf outings, you know, and, you know, golf outings are really good for revenue, but at the same time, they require a lot more staff. If you want to have the customer service for that outing, you need to have a lot of staff on hand. You know, there's a lot more wear and tear on the golf carts. You know, we need more staff and maintenance. We need more cart attendants, people in the lounge, so your wages are going to go up. So there's kind of a give and take. Good for revenue, but there's actually additional costs involved too. The other thing, you know, just wages are go up a little bit every year. You know, not that I'm not an advocate for minimum wage, but it has gone up 23% since 2014. So, you know, I don't know exactly what kind of effect that's had on our budget, but it does have an effect. And then we did spend more money and resources because we wanted the course to be really good for the state tournament. And I'm going to let Kelly elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, as you guys know, our budget, obviously I did go over on labor, but yeah, you know, this was probably the most important tournament we've had for the career of the golf course. And, you know, I thought I was right on track to be just under or just barely over, but I was too far, and I'm just, you know, to fix it, I'm just going to cut my staff back, you know, by probably 5 people. So, you know, it's going to affect the day-to-day operations a little bit, but, you know, I realize that we still got to be fiscally responsible and stay in our budget. So, yeah, but I think over the long haul, this tournament that we just had will be very good for Brandon Golf Course. So, yeah, if you guys got any questions, we're more than happy to answer them.
Sure. First of all, thank you both for coming in. Obviously, this year the transfer from the general fund will be a little bit greater than it has in the past, and you know, we'll talk to a lot of the drivers from that. And I know, and I think most everybody knows how much ownership you guys have, or how invested you are in the success of the golf course. I know how serious you take that. I know how responsible you are with that leadership position and you know, representing that for the community. A couple things I just want to talk to in terms of to kind of put that in perspective, because I think that's where people are going. And you know, one of the things that's came as a result of Sioux Falls going through all this when they're trying to re-look for their contracts is we've actually got a little bit of visibility now this year into their financial results. We know that through their 2.5, 3 courses that they have this year, they're going to lose over $600,000. I think that puts ours a bit into perspective, right? So we did a bit better than that. The other thing that I view as more important than that is really that when we just purely look at the number we're transferring back from the general fund, and people are going to point to that and say that's what the golf course lost, I don't view that's the case. I view that the balance sheet doesn't tell the full financial story. You know, when I think about it, you know, from me and my individual personal finances. Say for the year, I start with $100. I live in my house. I'm making mortgage payments. At the end of the year, I've got $50 left in my checking account. Did I lose $50 out throughout the year? Technically, from cash on hand, I did. But what's not counted in that is the equity, the principal that I put into my house. That is an asset. That's an asset that we're adding to the citizens of Brandon. To give you an idea, we paid almost $119,000 this year in added principal and added equity to the Clubhouse Pro Shop this year. That's not captured in the fund transfer that we're going to do. Other numbers that aren't captured in the fund transfer is the capital improvements that Zane and his team and Kelly and their team have done throughout the year on the cart path improvements. That's not captured on the balance sheet. Zane mentioned that, you know, it could be $70,000, it could be $80,000, it could be $100,000 that we added in value to the golf course that we essentially got for free as a result of their hard work, as a result of their fundraising, as a result of their sweat labor. The other thing that's not captured there is the new equipment that we just bought last year, paying down on that. That's paying towards an asset that's not captured in that general fund transfer. That's another, you know, $30,000. So add all those up. You know, that's over $200,000 just talked about right there. You know, so you got to really look at the overall picture. And when I look back at, you know, this year, prior years, whatever year it is, I'm very happy with the job these two have done. These three. Sorry. I'm four. Andrew, sorry there.
Andrew's hiding too.
You guys all do an amazing job. I know how seriously, I know how much you invest in making sure the customers are happy out there, providing customer service, and it's reflected in the quality of the course.
And Zane, I just want to say too, there's a lot of these things that are not within your control. But I will stand up and say how incredibly proud I am of you, the staff at the golf course, and the golf course as a whole. Kelly, you've done an incredible job.
Thank you.
This is my 10th year on the council. We had some pretty significant challenges, didn't we, Zane?
Yes.
And we all buckled in and said, we're going to make this work. We're not going to put it up for sale. We're not going to bow to that pressure. We just need to make it work. And you guys have done that. This year, we came in a little short. Next year, we'll come in a little long. So I couldn't be more proud of what you guys have done. So thank you for producing a beautiful course for us.
I do have one proposal, though. Just, you know, I know we already passed, we did raise the fees a little bit this for 2018. I guess I would like to propose, I think we can raise a little bit more money to offset some of our costs where it's not going to deter anybody from coming out and playing. We have a twilight rate right now that's $30 after 2 o'clock, $25 after 4 o'clock. I'd like to propose raising that by $3. If the council would approve that, and then also I guess I would like to, is that something that we can do right now, or?
No, we have to do it on it's got to be on the agenda.
It's got to be on, okay.
And we have to do it through a resolution, per resolution.
I'm just looking for more ways to raise some more money to cover our costs. You know, the other thing I guess I would like to do is pass on a little bit more costs onto our golf outings, because our golf outings do require a lot of extra labor. You know, I guess I would like to propose a $2.
If you could get all the information to him, Brian will put it in a resolution.
Okay.
And then we can do it. But keep going. Explain.
No, I was just gonna say, you know, I don't think we're gonna lose any golf outings by charging $2 more per player. So, you know, you figure, you know, the raise in the twilight rate plus the outings, I think is going to generate, based on our history, about another $20,000 revenue. So that'll help things, and I think that we're not going to lose any business by doing that. So, and then, you know, the other thing me and Kelly are going to look at too is looking for ways that we can, you know, we're going to kind of go through every line item and try to look for ways that we can conserve a little bit. You know, try to cut down on some expenses. So just want the council to be aware of that. So.
Mr. Wells, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to second that. Take advantage of everyone in the room to second Blaine's notion that these folks have done an incredible job. I'm not much of a golfer, but I have gone out there a couple times and visited with these folks, and they're extremely committed. And I think that, you know, for me, coming from the outside, having moved to Brandon 10 years ago, and I've lived in a number of places due to my previous career, but coming to Brandon, two things that really make this community stand out is our Parks Department and our golf course. And I think that golf course is tremendously important to keep in our own hands and keep it the way you guys are running it. And I know everyone out there is of vital importance to your staff. And again, thank you very much for the time and effort that you and your family and your staff put in for those cart paths, because that's just, I don't even know what to say about that. That's incredible.
Yes. And kudos to you, Kelly, for looking at cutting down on your staff, but you know, don't cut it back so far that the daily maintenance, because the main blood, the main money making is that foursome that comes from Laverne or comes from Hills or comes from Hartford and says, well, we haven't played Brandon for a while, and they pay for the cart and that, and then they go, oh, this course, I heard it was so nice, and there's this spot over here and that. But so don't cut back so that we lose that foursome that comes and drops $200 to play golf.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Shugs, you're not saying anything? Okay. Anything else, golf?
No, sir.
All right, moving on. Chief is back there. Anything, police?
No, sir, we do not.
All right. Park and Rec. Anything Park and Rec?
We have a meeting next week, Mayor, so I'll give a report after that.
Okay. All right. Administration. First up is Resolution 02-18 to transfer funds.
Transfer from the general fund to the golf course fund, $187,449.48. Transfer from the general fund to the sewer fund, $751,682.31. And then transfer from the Stipp Street fund to the Holly Main project, $100,000. And then once we receive our funds from the bonds, we will transfer from the sewer fund back to the general fund, $751,682.31.
I will make a motion to accept resolution 02-18.
I have a motion from Jones, second by McInerney, to approve Resolution 02-18, transferring of funds. Questions or discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item B, building permits issued.
Just a summary, we issued 438 total permits. Of those, 9 of those were multifamily for a total of 26 units. 40 of those were single-family dwellings. Total living units added was 66. Valuation, get down to $8,707,690. In commercial, a total $19,604,078 in total valuation was added. Compared to last year, it was $20,971,000, and in 2015 it was $19,602,689.
A lot of maintenance type things with concrete pads, shingle, reside, those type of things.
A lot of decks and patios.
Yes.
So that's what I was going to, are we classifying these differently than we had in the past? Because, you know, I look 20 years ago, we were doing 90 decks or patios a year, and then all of a sudden it just doubles and then almost triples. And then the same with kind of remodels, dropped in half or a little bit more. Did we do some sort of reclassification?
Could have. Some of those decks and patios could have been classified as remodels.
And then the other thing, obviously the single family has been trending down over the last 5 years. I know part of the reasons is that there's just not a lot of developments going up and less land available for developments. Do we have any gauge or metric that shows how many developable acres there actually are within Brandon's city limits and how that has changed over time over the last 10 to 20 years?
It's changed dramatically over the last 20 years. If you look at town developable property inside the city limits currently, you're looking at about 40 acres of Faust property. And then you've got, down at the south end of Sioux, which is a mixed use. But as far as residential property goes inside the city limits, there's not much left. The easy stuff has been developed. The low cost, flat, easily accessible inside the city limits has been developed. As we go further out, there's increased costs for utilities. You know, there are some properties fairly close by, but that's all up to those property owners if they want to develop or not. And the ones that, you know, most of those that are close just don't want to sell yet.
Any other questions on the building permits? If not, let's move on to our population estimates.
Estimated population, and this is our estimate, 9,836. That's based on 3,783 living units in town, and that gets back to the number that we use for each per persons per dwelling unit. You know, as you can see, we've been decreasing that a little bit each year. Right now, we think it's 2.6, but you know, if it's up by half a person, that's a pretty significant change in numbers. It would change it. You know, if we increased it by half a person, we'd be looking at 10,214 people. So you could be off just a little bit on that per household estimate, and we'd be off. But we're fairly conservative. We'll know in a couple years when the census comes out.
My personal perspective is that 2020 estimate. I appreciate you being conservative, but I truly do feel that that is going to be a conservative number when those numbers roll in.
We had this discussion.
There's a half a person.
Yeah. All right. Item D, we have a resignation from Planning and Zoning. Mr. Todd Stone, his work and his family have been taking the back seat according to his letter, and I thanked him for his honesty. I also thanked him for his diligent work as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. What we will do is the same thing we did earlier this year when Linda Weber resigned. I had people who were interested either send me or Brian their interest and a brief. I know we got resumes.
We did. I laid out at least a vacancy, or the timeline for the vacancy on page 36. Accept the resignation tonight. Todd has indicated he will serve until May, so we have time, but we're looking at 2 publications in the paper. And then just so everybody's on the same page, we use that expression of interest form, get that turned in, and then the council can make that appointment, or the mayor can make the appointment with confirmation from the council probably sometime in February.
Yep, I'll do the same as I did when Linda resigned. I'll do the same thing when Chuck resigned. That's how I've done it in the past, and so we will continue to follow that.
And I think we should express our appreciation to Todd, as you did, Mayor. He's done a really nice job for us. I attend those meetings, and he's an architect, so he has that technical background, and that's really helpful.
Mm-hmm. But it does need a motion in a second.
I will regretfully make a motion to accept Todd's resignation.
I have a motion from Jones, second from Fish, to accept the resignation. Any discussion or questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And again, very much thanks to Mr. Stone for all his work. Well, he's had 2 stints. He filled in, and then he got called up into the service, and then he came back, and then he was put back on. Yeah, he's served quite a few times. Okay. We have a request from the Brandon Valley School District on the old Dairy Queen property, a tax abatement request.
I personally feel that this is a no-brainer, given the fact that the building that was sitting on that property is no longer, and moving forward, I do believe there are plans for that property, but we don't know about those plans in concrete. But right now, it's just a vacant property that last time I looked was taped off and was gravel. So I'd make a motion to approve the tax abatement request.
I certainly agree, but Brian, just for clarification, could you walk us through this kind of, not a line item, but what I'd like to understand is if we're taking the building out, so they're not paying tax on that, what's the proposal, just to pay taxes on the existing land assessment? Because to me, if that's the case, if the building is raised, the arguments don't need to pay tax on that, can't argue that, that makes perfect sense. But if the prior land assessment was on what would have then not been building land, the land just got bigger, right? So does that need to be adjusted, the assessment on that?
No, when you look at the valuation of a parcel, there's 2 components, land and building. The land value isn't necessarily, it's still a separate parcel currently. I believe they have plans to maybe merge it with the parcel where the administration building is sitting on. So the building is gone, but the land value stays the same. So
the land value wouldn't go up because now there's more developable because there's not that building there. Okay. I'll second the motion.
All right. I have a motion from Jones, second by McInerney, to approve the tax abatement request from the Brandon Valley School District for the old Dairy Queen property. Is there any questions or discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Administration, we have a P&Z. Now, I know this isn't on the agenda, but I can ask again for volunteers to sit on that, or can't I, or whatnot?
Probably should put it on the agenda as
Okay.
far as appointment.
Okay.
In the meantime, you can strong arm
Okay.
someone to volunteer for that appointment.
Okay.
But otherwise,
Okay.
Paul can run it for
On
the meeting.
our yes, but the 6th is when I make that appointment, since it wasn't on the agenda.
Correct. So that'll fit in
Okay.
in line for the next following P&Z meeting.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Liquor license, where are we at with the
Yeah,
appraisal?
on the agenda?
Yeah, the gentleman that I'd contacted hasn't done any work on it yet, so I've sent out requests to commercial appraisers.
I have one from a commercial real.
Okay.
I can forward it to you.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's get that on the agenda. All right.
Did Joe ever get that information back from, she was going to gather information about the liquor license from the Mexican restaurant?
Oh,
I
I haven't heard anything yet.
No.
What was she, sorry, what was
She was gonna get some numbers from the Mexican restaurant and possibly some other restaurants as to the value of having a liquor license at that establishment.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple businesses
Okay.
that have them, and they've given me their opinion. Yes.
I'll forward what I have.
Okay.
I think you're going to get a different opinion from one that currently
yeah.
has one versus one that wants to buy one. But
Yeah. Very much so. All right. Moving on. Street. We have our maintenance work report. And then we have our discussion on Sioux and Main Boulevard projects.
So as we move forward with the design of the Holly Boulevard project from Sioux Boulevard west to the bridge, we just want to make sure that we're getting things in front of you that could potentially be issues, and our timeline is such that we want to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. So as you can see in this exhibit up here, we have a dark line that kind of outlines that project area, those are our fill limits. In doing so, we're filling into a floodway in the Big Sioux River drainage area. And we have done some research to look for information in regards to the characteristics upstream that this fill would not create what we call a no-rise situation. In order to do that fill, we want to make sure that there is not a rise of the water level upstream. When that bridge was built, there was limited information in asking the state and the county and then the engineering firm that did the design on that in regard to an upstream flood analysis. Stockwell has presented us a proposal which is following these few exhibits here, so it kind of leads into this discussion. We need to move forward with that no rise. If that no rise comes back, that we actually are filling into that floodway and that creates a rise in that river, we need to then do what's called a CLOMAR, or a letter of map revision, that goes through FEMA. If that no rise comes back, that we actually are creating a situation where we're rising or raising that elevation of what would be called the base flood elevation upstream, it could potentially delay the project. That's why we wanted to bring it to you. If we need to move forward with the CLOMAR, this portion of the project, the Holly Boulevard extension to the west of the bridge, would more than likely be pushed out until 2019. With that in mind, in the next exhibit, we show the utilities on the east side of the railroad crossing. That sanitary sewer trunk main extends from the new lift station south. We're extending that south actually all the way to the pool. I would hope that we would still move forward with this portion of the project, the utility portion, if we can't do the surfacing. And then whether or not we include the railroad crossing wouldn't necessarily matter. We think that we could maybe, and John can allude to this, the sanitary sewer crossing, we would like to do without closing Holly Boulevard down. So if we didn't extend the surfacing to the west, which would then require that we replace the railroad crossing, we would have to close Holly, which has been discussed, for a minimum of 4 weeks to put that railroad crossing in there. We could potentially move forward with the utility portion of this project if we don't do the surfacing to the west, which at a minimum I would recommend we still move forward with that. I think that's pretty much it.
The key there is if we extend the we need to extend the sanitary sewer, and if we're going to cross Holly Boulevard there, we're going to have to do it in phases. If we move forward with the railroad crossing, that actually helps that construction a little bit. But I think the key here is the no rise on the west side of Holly, the west end there, the floodplain, and the limited information that's available at the Corps of Engineers and with FEMA that's required us to actually extend into that, do additional drainage analysis for that area. So I guess, constructing that in the sanitary sewer across Holly, maintaining traffic, we feel is doable. We're going to have to switch traffic from one side to the other, north and south, but we'll be able to maintain traffic during that time.
So with that being said, we do have this contract. In order to move forward with that analysis upstream of the Big Sioux River, we should move forward with that contract if that's what we want to do to proceed with this project. The fill, just to give you a little more information, in the future, we would potentially look at widening this to a 5-lane section. Holly Boulevard, as you know, to the east is a 3-lane section. There was some discussion even when we reconstructed Holly Boulevard east of Sioux up to Split Rock that it could potentially need 5 lanes in the future, which we could still do that if we needed to. As you go west, we're filling into this floodway. It makes sense to build that section out to a 5-lane section. Just for the grading portion of it, we have a more durable roadway. And then in the future, if we wanted to expand that to 5 lanes, we would have the grading completed as a portion of this project. So we are planning, when we fill into those, into the side slope area, that we'll fill wide enough to expand that to 5 lanes so that we don't have to go through this process in the future again.
Well, I guess I'm certainly speaking for myself. I let the rest of the council speak for themselves, but you know, we're certainly hoping that FEMA comes back with those numbers in a timely manner so we can move forward with this, because there isn't anybody that necessarily wants to table this for another year.
Right. I think it's you know, it's going to be completely dependent on what that analysis comes back, and we've already started with some of this analysis. We have to keep this thing moving. We're going to end up, as part of that amendment, we actually have to survey the Big Sioux River upstream approximately a mile, and downstream a half to a mile to the south as well. So we have to do cross sections across the river and model that stream flow based on information that we have from upstream, which would be a model that was conducted up by Sioux Falls that was extended. If there was more information available, it would be a little quicker process, but since that information is not available, that's why we had to go to this level of analysis.
So I'm assuming that if we do the whole project, the resurfacing and the sewer, we could probably get a little bit better price than if we have to split it into two projects?
Yeah, I was just about to add, so we discussed that the other night, and I agree with that mentality. Maybe move forward with the utilities portion and try and save as much as we can by doing this project all at once. I think it creates a lot less headaches too for the public. Yeah. I mean, more than a money issue. I think there's more to it than that could benefit us. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of how I see it.
Well, I don't think there's anybody in this room that is necessarily looking forward to that getting closed, but sometimes with progress and the progress that would be made within that closure period, at the end of the day, even though it's going to be problematic for all of us, and believe me, I travel that road multiple times a day too, at the end of the day it'll be worth it. So I think we just continue to trudge forward and make sure that if we can, you know, we're keeping it open for emergency traffic and doing the things that we need to do. And
yeah, I did have a citizen contact me about the emergency traffic, and I said we do have a plan that we hope we can work through that.
Yep, and we do have that plan put together, and we plan on implementing that during all phases of construction. If we can minimize the closure to a single year, I think that's better for the community. I agree with you.
Mm-hmm. And just to let the public know, John, what we were talking about, that emergency route, that is at the site basically there, right? I mean, that's correct. Is that still the same plan?
Yeah,
because I know people are going to ask that.
Yep.
So the emergency, there's a plan to get emergency traffic through, but where is that? It's right there.
It is. It's actually just we still have to deal with the landowner, and maybe Paul can elaborate on this, so we don't have all those things taken care of. But our intent is to maintain emergency vehicle access, possibly through the church property that would actually access Holly from the west side of the tracks, basically.
There would be some other authorized vehicles as well, with us needing to get to our lift station and other necessary maintenance items. We would use it for that purpose as well. But yeah, there's still some discussions that need to be happening with property owners as we move forward with this design. The other thing too, I just wanted to summarize real quick for the public that this trunk main exists currently. It runs behind Casey's and then south basically to Aspen through Dogwood and Maine. And this is a large trunk main that is clay, it's flat, it's basically full. And we have upsized the main line to plan for this trunk main replacement at the lift station. So when the lift station was designed, we have large enough pipe stubbed out of that, which is an upsize from the existing pipe, so that we could continue with this project to the south, which has been something that has been planned for some time.
Okay. Anything else on this? All right, moving on. Item C, extend Stockwell contract for additional surface for the Sioux and Holly project.
This is the amendment request to do the hydraulic analysis of the Big Sioux River. From, like I had indicated earlier, we actually will have to physically go out and do cross sections across the Big Sioux River from basically the bridge north about a mile based by the river, a river mile if you will, and then also downstream a half to 3/4 of a mile. And that now that will help us analyze the flow that'll come through that area so that we can determine if the base flood elevation is impacted by our fill. And then if it is impacted by the amount of work that we're doing, then we may have to follow up with what is called a conditional letter of map revision that would be followed up, and would, if we have to go that route though, that will delay the project. That's the part that will delay the project because that's a long process. If we can determine that it has not impacted upstream with a no rise, then we can move forward with the project this year. It's that simple.
And just to be clear, that Clomar is not included in this proposal, so if we do need to move forward with that, that would be in addition to this.
Right.
This would require a motion in a second.
Second.
A motion from Fish, second by Jones, to approve the extension of the Stockwell contract for additional services. Questions or discussion?
Paul, you're obviously good with everything you're kind of seeing here. You wouldn't see any changes to make, or?
No, yes, I do. I've reviewed this, and I actually spoke with the state and the county and the engineer that did the original design, and we can't find any information to support that hydraulic analysis. So they actually said they purged their information after 2000. I think the bridge was built in 90. So that hydraulic analysis would go back quite a ways.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anything else, street? Okay, Raleigh's shaking his head no. We'll move on to water. The committee report, please.
All right, so we have the water committee, we have a meeting tomorrow night. We've kind of shifted our schedule here. At our last meeting, and I'm kind of flying blind here, I don't have my notes with me, but at our last meeting, one of the first things we discussed was just general maintenance and repairs, such as stuff that needs to be done to well 6 and some others regarding the street and sewer projects and how they tie in with the water projects. We agreed that as a committee we did not want to hold up any progress, and when it comes to maintenance and repairs, that's a no-brainer. We don't want to be involved in that. I would hope that would move forward without skipping a beat. So, and I'll try and keep this short. I know it's been a long meeting for you folks. Secondly, Jay Gilbertson was there from the East Dakota Water District. He had contacted me a few days prior to the meeting, stating he will try and be at all of our meetings, which was quite a blessing. I think he's a good resource. He works for a state agency that he can provide some good input to us. So, a few questions were formed as far as what we were going to do with the remainder of our time as a water committee. And a couple things that we're going to address tomorrow night is what got us to that point. Was it quantity, quality, et cetera, a combination of all. So we're going to address that tomorrow. Another thing that we discussed shortly that we're going to cover tomorrow as well is we've decided to form a water conservation committee, kind of a subcommittee of our task force. Again, water conservation, I think, is hugely important. It can reduce our numbers by as much as 30% realistically, and that was some numbers that was some data that was that comes from data provided to us by Sioux Falls and some other communities. So I think we need to get a water conservation committee going as soon as possible, and there's no reason we can't work on that now. So we're going to get that committee formed and up and running, and hopefully by the summer we'll have some education, hopefully by the summer the community will be more educated than what we are now as far as our water usage and responsibilities. So then we moved on to our current scenario, one thing that I have heard, I've spent a lot of my time, as far as the water committee goes, I've spent a lot of my time contacting state agencies. I think it's good to get their input because they're kind of a non-biased resource. So I've contacted a lot of our relevant state agencies, and then I've probably called and spoke to between the engineering departments and the city managers, probably at least 18 to 20 different towns around, mostly in South Dakota, but some of them in Iowa. And I'll come back to what they said here in a minute, but part of what they said and then what these state agencies, what I've heard over and over is that we need a long-term plan, and that's something that as the committee we talked about. We kind of have a plan, a 20-year plan, and essentially what we've heard from these professionals is we need to be a little more specific with our plan, and we need to extend that plan out. So there's some controversy behind that. Some folks think we have a long-term plan, others disagree. So I think we are going to clear that up. I think the consensus of the group was to produce a 40 to 50 year long-term plan and incorporate some of that forward thinking in our decisions that we're making now. So after that, we talked about well 8. Well 8, we were talking about moving forward with, and the question was raised, well, we don't have all of the test results back from well 8. So, and I agree with this, it's probably a good point that we don't move forward until we have all the data in front of us. Some of that has come in, some of the radium and gross alpha testing has come in, so we'll revisit that topic. The main thing we talked about that we got hung up on, or I shouldn't say hung up on, we spent a fair amount of time discussing, was coming up with an RFP for additional water sources. So again, this was something that everybody I talked to, and after explaining our situation, everybody that I talked to, meaning the other towns and cities and state agencies, was unanimous, 100%. We need to move forward, first of all, with an RFP process. That's something that we should have been probably doing for a few years ago. We definitely need to have that in place, which we've talked about and are going to utilize now. And our first task on that is going to be an RFP for, tonight will be an RFP for additional water sources. So what we talked about, we did not want to limit our scope. I talked to Brian and our staff and other engineering. I've met with other engineering departments and agencies, and what we've come up with, we don't want to limit it. We don't want to make it too specific, because we want to put out an RFP for additional water sources and say, hey, we'd like to gain up to 1 million extra gallons a day. Show me where we can go to look for that and give us a cost analysis. You know, what's that going to cost for us? And then at that point we can look at the quantity the quality of water that will be provided to us. I'm hoping by then, as a committee, we can come up with an agreement as far as where we want to set our standards for water quality. So an RFP for additional water sources, there's a dozen different engineering firms just in Sioux Falls alone that are probably capable of that. I think we need to visit on how to put that RFP out. Is it an ad? Do we send it directly? You know, etc. There's a lot of options that we can do there. But again, that's been an overwhelmingly unanimous decision or thought from everyone that I've spoke with. We need to move forward with that so that we can get additional water in here as soon as possible, whether it's MCWC or purchasing someone's Lewis and Clark's rights or Sioux Falls water, whatever. There's multiple sources, the Big Sioux Aquifer. There's multiple sources, but we want to put that into an RFP, not limit it, so that these engineering firms can respond to this RFP. Maybe they will come back with something that we have not thought about. That's the hope here. Yes.
Just point of clarification. What you're recommending is that the City Council take action to put out an RFP.
That's correct.
The Water Committee was just making recommendations to the Council, and it would be the Council who would then go out and actually direct that an RFP. That's what you're saying.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And I don't know if we're addressing this as a separate issue on the agenda tonight, but when we do that, yeah, we want to be clear on that. Everything that I spoke of with regards to the water committee is simply a recommendation to the city council.
Anything else in your report, your committee report?
I think that about sums it up.
Okay.
One thing on the RFP, just when we're writing it and in our communications with the firms we'll interview, one of the things I just like to make sure that they're open to and looking into is that when we explore the water options, we shouldn't be constrained by any boundaries. And when I say boundaries, I mean literally state lines. You know, they should be looking in southwest Minnesota, northwest Iowa, South Dakota. You know, if there are other sources on, as soon as you cross that imaginary line that we haven't talked about or explored that, at least that should be part of the work and the research. So.
Right, and Brian brought up a good point when we were discussing this. That's where he said, you know, let's not limit this, and that is a particular example of why we don't want to limit. We want to be pretty vague, or I don't want to use the word vague, but we want to be pretty open in this RFP submission so that we can come back with ideas like water from maybe Iowa or wherever. I mean, there's quite a few possibilities out there. So, the other real quick I want to mention is you mentioned interviewing firms. One thing that we discussed that we'll get into later, and we don't need to cover tonight, but in interviewing these engineering firms, I think it'd be prudent for the council to be involved in that, for maybe one or two members of the water committee to be involved in that, as well as staff. I think it'd be a good idea to kind of make it a collaborative effort to decide on who we should choose.
Yep, I agree with you.
So are we giving staff direction to start working on this? Is that what we're doing?
So that's what I don't know if we need a motion for this, but that's what I would like is to make a motion that we proceed with an RFP for additional water sources under the dialogue that Brian and I have had regarding up to 1 million gallons a day, not setting boundaries. And in that RFP, we want a cost analysis because we need to know. We talked about hooking up to MCWC, which I think is a great idea, but I want to see it in writing. What's it going to cost us?
Mm-hmm. I would second that. Let's get going on it.
Thank you.
So I have a motion from Mr. Wells.
Yes, sir.
And a second from Ms. Fish to have this begin drafting an RFP, not limiting up to 1 million gallons and not limiting the area.
Correct.
And are we talking 40 to 50 years?
Well, 1 million gallons a day will not be part of a 50-year plan. We will need more by that.
Sure.
But this is to get us going because, again, it's my opinion that if we get close to these numbers again this summer, we're going to be in trouble. And following summer, etc. I think we need to get to work sooner than later on finding more water. We have several resources right near us, the Big Sioux Aquifer, that we could probably utilize a little more than what we're currently doing to provide better quality water than, for example, Well 7. But again, these things all need to be put in front of us with a cost analysis. And I, as usual, will go to the public and say, this is what's been presented to us. What do you want? You know, if you don't want to pay $1 extra a month for better water, then you've got my vote. But if you want to do it, if you want to pay $5 extra a month for better water, you've got my vote. So at that point, I'll go to the public and follow my usual scope.
Okay.
Brian, did you have something to okay.
If you don't mind, I would like to add something real quick. Brian and I had a discussion today. We wouldn't want to just limit that RFP to an additional 1 million gallons if that's what we're going to say. We'd want to actually have a cumulative volume of water that we're looking for water sources, not just the additional 1 million, but it would be what's been identified that we need total for water.
Okay.
That's what we're looking for water, alternate water resources for, not just the extra 1 million that we've discussed.
I'm good with that, absolutely.
Just so we're clear.
Go ahead.
I had a question.
Sure.
Do you have a time frame to get all this prepared?
The RFP? Yeah, so we talked about this, and Brian is probably better versed in this process than I am. as far as a timeline regarding an RFP. And I've also, so after Brian and I talked about it, I reached out to several different engineering firms and said, here's what we're talking about. I want to pick your brain. What do you think of, first of all, what do you think of this process? What do you think of this idea? And how long would it take you to respond? How long should we factor in to responding, not just producing, but responding to an RFP? And I'll let Brian speak to that.
We'll try to have a draft for your review at the next council meeting, so that'd be the February 5th. Is that the date?
February 5th.
Yep. So we'll try to, we'll have a draft ready for you at that meeting. If you approve it, we will get it out in some fashion. You know, I certainly don't want to be the, if we're mailing out proposals directly to firms, I certainly don't want to be the one to choose those firms. We'll certainly put an ad in the paper. Usually a reasonable amount of time to submit those proposals to the city, and then the review time. You know, if we get a dozen firms, it's going to take a while to weed those down to the final 2 or 3 that would then interview probably in front of the city council to be chosen. And then as far as the work done, that's all going to depend on the scope that we throw in there. I've got just notes that I've been making, fairly in-depth study, at least from what I would like to see. But that's up to the council. We'll draft something for you, like I said, for the next council meeting.
And Chuck, to answer your question specifically regarding the firms responding, everybody that I talked to said, yeah, they would like at least a few weeks. We're talking 2 to 4 weeks for them to respond to it, because it's going to take some work for them up front. I mean, these folks are going to have to go to the Lewis and Clarks and the MCWCs and the Sioux Fallses and have conversations with them to get an idea of what it would cost for us. It's more elaborate than it may appear on the surface, but a lot of that work can be done by these firms that are going to respond. And I think we as a group, whether well, I should say a collaborative effort between the committee and staff and council, I think we can have these firms narrowed down to a good 2 or 3 within, I would say, a few weeks at least. Again, this is I want to stress, this is uncharted territory for Brent. You know, we've not gone this route regarding, or at least regarding water lately. So this is this process. We're going to be I don't know that we have definitive answers yet on everything, but I think we do have a general idea.
A couple of different things. First of all, I applaud you in the committee for the work that you've done so far. You know, there's certainly a contingent of people out there that think that we've formed this committee for smoke and mirrors. That's truly not the case. I mean, what you bring to us has genuine value. The conservation side, I'm looking forward to that, because last year when we started hitting our peaks and we had to put the ban in place, we've proved to ourselves at that point that forced conservation dropped our usage in half. Voluntary conservation, I think, is going to be valid when it comes to this. Is it prudent that we're looking at this? Is it timely? Absolutely. Is it emergent? In my personal opinion, no, not yet. But we're certainly moving towards that. So again, my input is I applaud you folks for doing what you've done to this point, and let's continue to move forward. I'm excited about the conservation side.
Yeah, and the Conservation Committee, I think, is something that could maybe stay in place. You know, this Water Committee, at our next meeting, we're going to discuss, try and narrow it down a little more definitively as far as our timeline. We don't want to go on forever, but I think a Water Conservation Committee is something that we can utilize throughout our future.
Are you going to take these members from the committee that is in place right now?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
We're going to discuss that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? I have a motion from Wells, second by Fish, to have staff move forward to put a RFP out for additional water sources with the discussion from our city engineer and our city administrator on not limiting it to it, but to what we need. Questions or discussion? That said, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? again, thank you for all your work, and all you water committee people in the room also. Rushmore Sewer proposals.
This is just a memo that I put together to summarize a couple items, the maintenance and then ongoing projects that we're looking at in order to take care of an ongoing issue that we seem to be having with a certain sewer main that goes underneath the Clark Insurance Building and then extends, well, it starts at Sylvan Circle down to Teton, underneath an apartment complex, runs parallel to the Clark Insurance Building, and then south and provides service to the Pizza Ranch, 212, the Brandon Steakhouse as well. So I think Raleigh can speak to some of this too, is they've done some jetting and some maintenance on that line, and it continues to be an issue. The last cleaning that they did was actually a ball of roots that caused a plug in the pipe. As you know, we're moving forward with projects in the Sylvan Circle area. We've been doing that for about 8 years now. The last project that we did extended just east of the intersection of Teton and Sylvan Circle. So as we move forward, we are planning on getting into this area to resolve the issue of the main line being underneath the apartment complex. We don't want our utilities underneath buildings, so we do plan on moving that. However, there's an ongoing issue, what seems to be grease. And so you can read through my memo if you haven't already, but some of the ongoing items that we're looking at doing are some of the things that...
Before you go...
Yeah, go ahead.
Has the Clarks got this piece of paper that you're reading off?
Yep, I sent it to them today.
All right.
Did you get a chance to read through it? Okay, good. And you guys can speak to it too if you want. But just the continuing routine maintenance and cleaning, and then indicating that in our utility records. We also have a inspection company that does videoing for our sanitary sewer main lines. Raleigh routinely hires them to not just inspect, but just to locate our sewer mains, which is one of the items that we want to potentially do, is put what's a locating ball on the end of that sewer camera to actually find the location of the sewer, so that we can, if it is in fact underneath these buildings, get it moved. And we would do that with a future project. Probably you can step in here anytime if you want, but our projects that we would propose, I have 3 of those listed here. There's numerous things that we could do to move that sanitary sewer main. We would continue with the Sylvan Circle project down Teton, and that would include about 700 lineal feet of sanitary sewer at the cost of about $322,000, and that includes the water in the street replacement that we do not have planned for this year. We could move forward with that next year if we so chose. Do that. The other is just to get the sanitary sewer main from underneath the buildings itself and not replace the sanitary sewer on Teton and Sylvan Circle. And then we could relocate the sanitary sewer main line down Rushmore, which would change the direction of the flow where it currently goes right now. Raleigh was a little concerned about the lift station at Rushmore being able to handle that, and I can let him speak to that real quick.
Yeah, just one other thing. The camera company, HydroClean, showed up today, so they were doing the inspection as of today. So probably complete that by tomorrow, he said.
Okay.
Get that info back to me. Yeah, the issue I have right now is the lift station, Pioneer, the pumps run an average about 4 hours each day, each pump. Taking some of that flow off of there would be great, but now I'm also pushing that to Rushmore, which right now both those pumps are probably running the least amount, 5 and 5, but they also pump directly to another lift station, which is undersized compared to the one that it's pumping to now. So Rushmore actually pumps about 200, I think it said 200 right here. Rushmore is actually 100 gallons a minute, where Wyom's probably runs in that 100 gallon a minute too. So you'd be doubling the flow that's coming into that. I don't know if that's recommended, but plus you'd be putting grease into 2 more lift stations where instead of just 1. So I agree with Paul. We do need to take care of the grease issue, though. I think that's one of the issues we got to concentrate on.
And that's where I was kind of leading to. These reconstruction projects they help because we want to put our main where it belongs, but the issue here we really have is that our grease inspection program, the way it sounds, has not been done lately. I'm not sure when the last time that we did a grease inspection program, but the other thing too is to let these businesses know, or to at least give them a heads up that we're looking into items that potentially cost us money, that we need to be taking care of the grease as the main culprit. So by sending them some letters, that was another item that we could do just on a maintenance issue, is to notify them that we'd like to see some control of that grease. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes.
So, since the last time we talked about this, we discovered that not only the Steakhouse Pizza Ranch, but also 212 is a part of that process too, a part of that dumping of the food and the grease and that sort of thing. In addition to it, we understand that there's a variance in the piping.
Mm-hmm.
All the piping is 8-inch until it gets under our building, and it turns into 6-inch. Okay, problematic. Okay.
Yes.
And there wasn't sure if maybe this will come out when they do the filming with that HydroClean, but if there's a dip or a grade variance, that would narrow it even more, from 6-inch even narrower than that. So, and I plead with the council here. It's not a matter of if another event's going to happen, but it's a matter of when. So we'd sure appreciate some kind of resolve here, not in 2019, but sooner than later.
Raleigh, will the inspection, where'd Raleigh go? There he is. You don't have to come up. Will the inspection show if there's an elevation change?
Not really.
No?
Pretty
Okay.
much just looking straight down.
Okay. Because to me, it sounds like it's a culmination or a possibility of mainly 2 or 3 different issues, or things that are going wrong underneath their building. Is that?
The video could show a sag, not necessarily an elevation change.
Sure.
In the
Yep.
But if
Yep.
if there's a deflection in the pipe,
Right.
it would show that there is water. They clean it, and then the water sits in those depressed areas. So when the camera goes through there,
It'll see that.
You
Sure.
can see the
Right.
water sitting in the bottom.
But essentially,
of
it's
the pipe,
either
which is
roots
an indication
or
of sag.
roots or grease or the size or an elevation problem.
There may be
I mean, those are the 4 main potentials, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in addition, and I want to comment on the grease program too. I mean, we can send letters all day long, but unless there's some kind of enforcement, it's a dirty process, I understand, to clean these grease traps out at a restaurant. So I don't think anybody's going to volunteer to do that. And so if you're going to have a compliance issue for a grease trap program, there needs to be some kind of enforcement behind it. And the city needs to enforce that. That's just my opinion.
And I would agree with that, but we're making a big assumption here saying that these restaurants are doing that. And so I would hate for that information to get out, accusing them of something that we really don't know. We're making that assumption, and I don't think that's necessarily a fair assumption. So I think we need to talk to them and see what their process is, make sure that we've got a process in place, but let's caution against just assuming that that's happening. I don't know that.
We're just seeing a combination between tree roots and grease. And if there's no enforcement, if there's no code, I understand there might, at one time there wasn't an ordinance for grease trap. Is that true?
We agree, and we certainly do all agree, and we've spoke about this in depth, that we need to get back to that inspection program, and it's prudent for us to be doing that. So I do agree with Barb. I mean, I certainly don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but in the same token, we need to make sure, especially since we're having this issue, we need to make sure that we're following through to make sure that people are doing the proper
Well, and the
things.
grease is coming from someplace.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, and it might be one of those things where additional, it's kind of like Twitter in the enforcement. If they know more about it, these business owners, I know all of them, they're very conscientious people, they're very good people, they're very good neighbors. They will take it seriously if they know what impact it is having on their neighbors. So I think that's the one good thing working for you. And that's why, a couple of these make sense. But in terms of the long-term fix, Paul, I guess the main thing I really want to understand is, you know, when we throw out these numbers, 300,000, 130,000, 275,000, is that truly all incremental expenses, or is this an acceleration of an expense that would have been otherwise?
Without doing a design on it, I'm just putting an estimate together based on the length of pipe and on typical project costs. This is a little different because you're underneath an apartment complex and next to an insurance company. So there's some contingencies that I added in there in regard to just the constructability and the space allotted to get construction equipment in there. And I mean, obviously, until we actually do a design and a full-blown cost estimate, those are just rough numbers. But I did add some additional costs in there, just anticipating that there are a lot of unknowns with utilities, other items that are out of our control right now that we don't have the information on.
Yeah, I truly understand it's a very high-level estimate, but is it all incremental, or would any of that cost have been absorbed in the project that was going to happen anyways?
Absolutely.
I guess is my question.
Yes.
Which?
All
yes.
of it. Every one of those cost estimates are projects that we were going to do anyway, regardless of this.
So when I look at 322,000, that's not an incremental 322,000 to taxpayers. You're saying that
No.
We don't know what percent, but a decent sized percent of that would have been there as an expense anyways.
Yeah, all of it would be.
All of it.
John, the
All
projects that we're moving forward with, that 322,000 is the length of pipe times a number that we've, just from experience, what these projects cost. So that includes sanitary sewer from where we stopped the Sylvan Circle project, south down Teton, replacing the sewer main underneath the apartment complex, past Clark Insurance, and south to the manhole on Rushmore.
So is the question then whether we can wait until 2019, or and whether we should?
That's a design and a budget question, probably. I mean, in order to get a design done now and get it bid in a timely manner, that's a fairly significant project to move forward with at this point. I'm not saying it's not possible, but maybe Brian, you can speak to the budget part of it. We do not have this planned for this year. It's construction. In fact, the remainder of Sylvan Circle, we did have planned for 2018, but just prioritizing projects and moving forward with other ones, including that trunk main project, we pushed the Sylvan Circle project out another year. So,
because obviously it's something we'd like to get addressed as soon as we could, but you know, I think from the options you bring forward, we're taking in a prudent manner, right? Because what we're saying is that there are actions we can take on our end, there are actions these businesses can take on their end to help reduce some of the risk that can extend the life of it, reduce the likelihood it's going to happen. That might buy us that extra year we need.
I believe so. When we get this information back from reviewing the sanitary sewer videoing that we're doing, that's some good information, key information that we don't have right now to move forward with a decision as far as the project goes. Those numbers, I don't think, and I kind of included that in my memo, they don't really resolve the grease issue.
No.
If that's what's causing this problem, replacing sanitary sewer, granted, the 6-inch main, we have 6-inch mains in Brandon right now that provide a heck of a lot more service and flow than what's being put into that line. So I don't disregard the fact that we're going from a 8 to a 6-inch. It doesn't look good on a map, but the fact that it can handle the flow in that area, and we haven't analyzed that, but I don't think that that's the issue. And we'll find that if that main line is in decent shape with that video, if it's not, we'll see something that we could potentially decide that we need to move forward with a project.
I will say this. I promised you last time you were here, and I make that promise to you again. We will do our due diligence to try to defer any problems that we've had in the past, and I think we're doing that right now. I think grabbing these baseline facts by running those lines, I think will tell us something.
I appreciate that, Mr. Jones. I guess as far as the maintenance needs go, if nothing else, until the council decides on the next step, I would ask that the city maintenance or someone do a monthly inspection potentially, because it's a real concern. It's a real concern for, we have 15 to 20 people there all the time. These are offices, these are buildings, public comes in. Okay, so I think until this decision's made, I'd like to see support from the council to do a monthly inspection or something like that. Just by coincidence, last Monday we were there when the lid was popped off of the manhole next to our building, and there was debris in there. Okay, there was debris. Just by coincidence, there was debris. We could see it in there. So it's something that can occur really quickly. Mm-hmm. So I think having some kind of a monthly inspection or something of that sort would be needed until the council decides what they're going to do.
Can we reach out to those businesses then and see where we're at on that grease trap thing?
Yes, we will do that.
Okay. And can we revisit that, whether we had it as an ordinance or whether we had it a requirement, that, and then move forward on getting a grease trap inspection program
we
going
we have
back
a
in?
discharge ordinance in regard to certain types of material, but like Raleigh's indicated, that as far as a program goes, that requires the inspection and detailed documentation of that, and then moving forward with some sort of an enforcement. If that were a fine or something, I guess that would be something we need to discuss.
Okay. And then again, jetting and doing very timely checks on that. Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Clark, that we can help you with? You bet. Thank you. We have Sioux Falls Civil Constructors Pay App number 12, final for the lift station.
This is the final pay request for the lift station. Actually, we recommend approval in the amount of $29,000 to finalize that project. All the punch list and warranty items have been completed.
A motion from Wells, second by Jones, to approve the final pay app. Any questions or discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we have Gil Haugen Construction Pay App number 3 and final for the water treatment plant HMO.
Same thing here, guys. We recommend approval in the amount of $40,292.15, and that is for the final pay request for the HMO project, and that all punch list items and warranty, not the warranty yet, but the punch list items have been completed.
And with respect to the baseline of what we're going to run that system at, this is irrelevant. We can take it from here and establish what we need to do.
Yeah.
Without bringing them back in, is that correct? Everything is there?
Yeah. Yep, we can adjust it now. Yeah, we can adjust the flow and things like that. Yep, this is the construction. This was actually just the installation of the new tanks and the mixers and the flow control.
I guess what I was getting at is if we decide we need to adjust that,
yeah,
so much,
yeah,
we need to come back in and
yeah,
that's
yeah, good question. Don, the actual water treatment plant, the adding of the HMO process was an increase in the existing tank. The existing tanks were smaller than this. Mm-hmm. We were not able to increase the tanks to the size we wanted without making a reconstruction of the plant. We wanted to maximize that existing space in the existing plant, and so we increased the container sizes or the tank sizes in there as much as we could. Ideally, we would have made them even larger, but we were not able to do that because of the space constraints, and we decided not to add on to the building to make that larger. So these tanks were sized basically to maximize the space, but also to allow us to feed HMO into the process so that we could actually utilize well 7 if that chooses to go down that road. So.
Okay. So moved.
Second. A motion from Wells, second by Jones, to approve pay app number 3 final to Gil Haugen. Questions or discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Anything else? Water, sewer? Anything else before council?
Remove their snow from their sidewalks?
Yes.
So that we're not having to go out and
yes.
pick them?
Do we have a 24-hour period to remove it? Or
It's a 48 hour.
48 hour?
Remove snow from your sidewalks and driveways, and you're not supposed to be putting them into the streets when you're doing the snow removal. So just a reminder so that we don't have to go out and start writing tickets. Would be
Okay.
appreciated. A lot of kids
Alright.
walk to school, home from school.
Okay. All right. With that,
Mayor, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
a motion from Jones, second from McInerney for adjournment. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Oh, good times, good times.